Okay, got another one. I was just thinking like in some of these videos, like I might talk like a little bit, like have a little bit of when you have like a little taste of something, a hint of something, that's called smack. So sometimes I might smack of like authority or like having like having authority. But sometimes the speaking confidently, it helps you to believe in yourself, and it helps to enunciate and fathom ideas. But I don't mean to enter these like as a lecture, but I think the real spirit of like learning and reasoning is more so even like a journal that might even be deeper than the standpoint of a discussion like a dialogue, because I think music sounds more so. I was asking a brother at a delivery at a restaurant where I was picking up. He had like piercings in his ear, and he's one of those brothers where they can be like in their like maybe later 40s or early 50s, but they're still having swagger, and you gotta watch your girlfriend around. Not that he's trying to hit on anyone's girlfriend, but you gotta respect them as still as players. Like even though they may be older, that doesn't mean that they're not smooth anymore, and that they don't enjoy having fun. So he had piercings, and I was asking him like how long he had piercings, and he said he got them like when he was still like a young teenager. And I was asking him if he actually gets like any like success or favor like having earrings like that, and he said it's cool, but you don't necessarily get, nobody's entitled to anything. He said that like even having piercings. So but he was saying that, so I was saying, so it has to be like, like if it's really you, then the someone would appreciate it, right? He said no, actually more so if it's really them, because everyone has their different cup of tea. So if it's what works for them, then they'll rock with you. But all I meant to say is that things are more, and I was telling him like, well, I like music like that. So it's like, if the music sounds cool to you, if you're playing to yourself, then you can play to any audience. If you can enjoy your own music. I was thinking, he's like, yeah, I rock with that. And I think that these videos are like that, and even ideas are like that, where one, it's cooler when you're enunciating it as it's occurring to you. That's cool. But then on top of that, if you are moved by your video, but you're also having the access to do it publicly, and therefore like be accountable, and not just simply sending breath, but it's at least landing on something, as you can appreciate a device that will be public. It's maybe deeper as like a form of journal, and also like so it's at least landing with maybe one person, but not necessarily a large swath. And that might be the deepest aspect of like insight, is that, so I want to enter these and offer this content in insight, that I'm intending as insight, is that it's and not insight as though like condescending, but just like is what I can offer as a person. It's more so like a journal, and nothing more or less authoritative than just a journal. And that might also be the value. And then also that it's not intended to a particular audience, and that I'm not engaging with the analytics. I put in another video that the only analytics I look into is just the actual the views on the video. That's my gauge about like what might be landing or not. And I try not to look further than that, because at that point I might be like pandering or curating a message, and that would somewhat compromise the tone and even the curating and offering of insight. If I were to gauge it and calculate it, it might not be as authentic. So just that it would land for who it would land for, who would be interested enough or happen upon the video, that might be the closest metrics that are necessary. But what I wanted to say is sometimes like there was this really deep movie in the 90s. A parent of one of my friends, a family that I grew up around, had that video for his family, and then I came across it by spending time with them. And it was called Flight of the Navigator, and it's about a boy who was coming home, and he took like a shortcut through the woods, and he tripped. And when he woke up, it woke up like 20 years later, and he had actually came across an extraterrestrial life form, but it wasn't in the form of an organic being. It was actually in the form of a spaceship. That the being had been a spaceship. It was like a sentient spaceship, and he had been gone all over time and space for what was appreciated in human terms as like 20 years. But he didn't actually realize that any time had passed, and it can actually be fathomed whether in fact any time did or would have or could have passed in absolute terms, when you're existing at beyond what's appreciated at the speed of light. Because I've said that if you can appreciate the number one, so how many things are existing online as I'm speaking this, including myself, are those things not being conveyed in ones and nones, that is aughts and knots, or ones and aughts, ones and knots, ones and zeros? Could you appreciate that all that is existing online is in fact still one, or consequence of the unit 1 and 0 at once, being so many things online at once. Now, could not existence also be something similar, where you have an existent that's, and sometimes that's being considered a corpuscle, or like a quantum, like quanta, or like the finest subatomic particle that can be appreciated. But you might also limit yourself if you say particle as though it's respective from other things, because where there might be respective motions but not respective existence, where it's in fact all things at once. How many things is your consciousness not apprehending at once? So I'm seeing the grass, I'm seeing distinctions within the grass, beauty within the grass and the sidewalk, and a little bit of sunlight in my eyes. I'm taking in all that at once. I'm taking that in as a recipient. Is that not existing as itself, as that many things at once? Could it not be beyond that, all things that are known, said, or thought, or could exist at once? That one thing that's way past beyond what you would appreciate as the speed of light, and more dynamic, and more potent, and more forceful than we can appreciate as the speed of light. Because at least with the speed of light, you're talking about two respective positions. But if you were to exist as those two respective positions, the separation between them and the coming together of that once at once, that's really profound. So if you were like that, like in that film, that could conceivably exist and do that much doing in what would appreciate it as 20 years of time. But when he came, it was kind of deep when he came back to his family, who had already missed him and mourned him, but he still existed and would meet them again. But sometimes you find an oasis, like a position to make content like this in the middle of the city. All the people you've loved, all the people you've thought about, all the people you fantasized about, all the people you desired, all the people you feared, they still exist as you're finding an oasis. And then you come back to that, like you hear somebody driving by in a car and they're listening to a podcast about real life. And then, did you know this one owed that one that much money? They're talking about the goings on of all the people you've known and loved at once. And it's a little bit daunting to have an oasis, an epiphany, a reprieve from the goings on of people. A rock under a rock in wide open, that's not under a rock, just a place of peace and creativity. And you come back into what's called like the rat race, or just the collective goings on. You could say that when you love one person, you love all people that exist. If I were to kiss someone, I'm kissing so many people that exist in this area that have to do with that person, where I'm actually kissing all the people that are here, because you can't separate any one person or thing. But if you have an experience of creativity where you had a reprieve from all the people you've known or thought about, and they actually didn't know what you were up to for an hour or so forth, then you come back to that, it's a little bit daunting, like coming back into the orbit or rotation of Earth, the orbit and rotation of the rat race. And it's a little bit violent and daunting, and also scary that these many people that I've known that have chosen not to be a part of their life, they're loving, they're owing each other money, they're doing things for each other, they're running from each other, they're doing all this going on, and I somehow got away from that, and now I'm coming back into that. But that much going on would have gone on with and without me, and maybe likely would prefer to do so without me. That's a little bit daunting and disheartening, but also beautiful to actually escape that, but then inevitably come back to it, and it's like, damn, I'm back into the rat race, into the blood money, because life is about money. And money has blood on it, if you think about what money has come through and been stripped from. So I'm coming back into the blood money as I'm coming back into society. I'm coming back into the loving of so many people that would and had and will love without me by choice. It's kind of scary, but they're really a lot of people are really interested in each other, and they're interested in so much of life that has nothing to do with us, and they would be as content. And then when we come back into it by necessity, it's a little bit daunting, like damn, y'all really loved each other that much, y'all really owed each other that much money, y'all really were that worried about each other, and y'all didn't know about me or wonder about me that long. And if you did wonder about me, you're more so concerned, just like you're concerned about an animal that you have to put down or fix. And I don't want that shit either, that concern either. But it's like it's a little bit daunting. But I just want to say that sometimes you have the experience of the flight of the navigator, where you and creativity, you and this awesome spaceship, extraterrestrial spaceship, that's so awesome and so dynamic that you don't even perceive it, yet you're sitting on it. So maybe as I'm sitting on the Earth right now, I'm actually sitting on a spaceship, an interdimensional, intergalactic spaceship that had been at all points and is still at all points before and as I sit down and as I come back into the orbit of the rat race, and the loving and the money making and the money owing that has nothing to do with me and would have nothing to do with me by choice. But we somehow find ourselves having to deal with one another, me and life having to deal with one another. So here I go, getting back into society.